Stories all have three elements. They all have a plot, they all have a character, they all have a moral. Now, what does it take to make a plot a plot? As long as it's just the expected deal, nobody pays attention, nobody cares about that. It's when something unexpected happens that then we begin to pay attention. And so then the question is, why does that get our attention? Well, it's interesting, I'm curious, I want to know what's going to happen. Yeah, but why? What's at stake for us? Why? Really, we spend billions of dollars a year on this thing. I mean, books and plays and novels, and they all have the same mechanism. How many times does the unexpected to happen to you each day in little ways? And then there's big ways, right? People lose jobs, people lose loved ones, marriages break up, threats, dangers, challenges that we have to deal with. We have to deal with them. We have no choice but to deal with them. And we seem infinitely curious to learn how. The fact that we can observe somebody doing something and experience it as if we were doing it. And that's how stories work. And so when we identify with the protagonist in the story, we're actually experiencing some of the fear, some of the hope, some of the anger, some of the redemption that goes on. And so the moral that a story teaches is not just an abstraction like haste makes waste. It's a piece of experience. It teaches the heart, not just the head. It's emotional learning. What about families? Who'd you hear your first stories from? Yeah, I mean, everybody here is a professional storyteller, right, if you have kids. What's going on there? Why is all that storytelling? What's the point? Jerome Bruner reported that 85% of the time parents spend with young children is in storytelling. Why? Instruction. He called it instruction in agency. Let me tell you about Uncle Charlie. Now, Uncle Charlie started out good, but he took a wrong turn. And I don't know, but Aunt Sally over here, boy, she got it right. And let me tell you about Aunt Sally. What family does not have those stories? And those stories are all stories from which we learn because we identify with Uncle Charlie and Aunt Sally, and we begin to internalize those lessons, and we begin to acquire the emotional resources for being choiceful, agentic human beings. That's what stories teach. That's how stories work. So they're not trivial. They're in fact one of the major ways we actually understand ourselves and the world in which we live. Now, public narrative is a way of harnessing the power of story to the work of leadership. And it's a way of harnessing that power in three ways. First is through a story of self. It's by harnessing the power of story to use stories from our experience. And stories are all structured in the same way. There's a moment of challenge. There's a moment that the protagonist is confronted with a choice. And then there is an outcome. Okay, that's kind of the basic, that's at the heart of a plot, are those moments, actual moments. How can we share moments in our lives to enable others to understand, to get, to feel why we've been called to what we've been called to? I'm not talking about resumes. I'm not talking about titles. I'm talking about values. I'm talking about what's actually called us. And I use the word calling deliberately. What do we want to do in the world? What difference do we want to make in the world? Oh, no, but that means I've got to be vulnerable. Oh, God, well, we can't have any vulnerability around, right? I mean, we all know that leadership's about being invulnerable, right? Leadership's like, really? Is that really what it is? What do you learn from perfect people? Do you learn anything from perfect people? Do you even believe them, ever? See, one of the reasons I like Moses is he's so flawed. There are so many struggles, and so there is so much to learn. See, our heroism, our courage is connected to our failures, to our faults, to our struggles. And so this whole thing about bringing vulnerability into an account of one's story makes it real, makes it authentic. To empower authenticity with the skill, with the craft, with the intentionality that it merits and deserves. Because God knows there's a lot of that going on to serve inauthenticity. That's a story of self. Then a story of us is using narrative, moments of narrative and experience to bring alive values that we share, moments that we remember, moments that we've shared as a group. But a story of us is not based on categories. We think of us often as this category or that category. I'm a this, so I can't be a that. It's not a categorical us, it's an experiential us. In other words, it's moments in which we share the experience, the joy when a child surprises us and learns when we never thought he or she would. Those are magic moments, aren't they? I'll bet everybody in this room practically can recall those kinds of moments. That's a value we share. You make a story of us out of those kinds of moments. It's the experience that we share these values, not just, let me tell you the values we share, like making a list. It's not that. It's the experience. And then the story of now. And the story of now is different because the story of now is saying this moment is now a plot moment. Guess what, folks? At this moment, we are facing a challenge. And we have to choose how to respond. So we have to locate the sources of hope that can open a pathway to action so that we will choose action in this moment in which we are being confronted with the need to act. And that's a story of now. And they all relate to each other. It's not a script. It's not like learning a script. It's not like, oh, I got my public narrative, so now I'm done. Well, you're done when you're in your grave, is the reality, because our stories unfold as long as we live. Our stories of self-evolve, who we are with, our stories of us, our stories of now change and come. So this is not about learning a script. It's about learning a process, a way of processing information so as to be able to translate values into sources of courage and hope and possibility and action.